Now, usually before we have the business sports luncheon speaker, I say, and here to introduce the speaker is the Dean of Sports. But that really relates to a couple of old guys. Instead, I'm very happy to say we have the Queen of Mid-Michigan sports with us today from Channel 6, who is our media sponsor, Audrey Dahlgren, to introduce Bill Beekman. Audrey, welcome.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much. I made sure to unmute myself, but yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to introduce this next speaker to you guys, someone who you all know very well if you are involved in Michigan State athletics in any type of capacity, and that is Michigan State's Athletic Director, Bill Beekman. He took over the position in July of 2018. He's the 19th Athletic Director to take over at the university at Michigan State. And we always talk about, I know that in our sportscast, it seems like all this last year, we've been mentioning how this is a year unlike any other that we've ever had. And it's so true. We've had to change how we've even covered sports, covered Michigan State sports. We miss interviewing people in person and seeing people in person and being right on the court and, on the field as much as all the fans do, I'm sure. And that's something that maybe Beekman will touch upon with the spring game that's going to be this Saturday, and how spectators are going to be able to, actually a limited number are going to be able to be there, but this has been a challenging year trying to navigate how to not only keep the athletes safe. Beekman has mentioned that multiple times, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, when he had to have all those meetings with the Big Ten conference, and then trying to get the medical protocols in place, not only with the staff at Michigan State and the trainers, but working it out with the Big Ten, which maybe he'll get into that as well. And so, to offer a lot more insight into the behind the scenes stuff, as well as managing the budget, because with COVID-19, it's a whole different beast. And so on that note, I will formally introduce Bill Beekman via Zoom.
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks so much. And it will be really wonderful when we can actually spend time in person again. It's been a really crazy year and a wild ride. So what I thought I would do is take a few minutes to just sort of give everybody a little bit of background about MSU Athletics, what we're about, what we're trying to do, and then spend some time talking about a number of the things that Audrey mentioned, how things have gone throughout the pandemic, what we've been able to do and not do. Some of the behind the scenes relative to the football season, the spring game, basketball, and then talk a little bit about where we hope to be next year. Touch upon our budget a little bit, as it has been probably the most challenging year in college athletics in the history of college athletics. So let me start by just giving you a little bit of background about what MSU Athletics is and what we're about. And we've got 25 sports, 13 on the women's side, 12 on the men's side. We're concluding the next couple months our 136th season of MSU Athletics. Our first sport was baseball, which started in 1884. Our most recent addition is women's rowing, which started in 1999. So we've got 19 head coaches across 25 sports because a number of sports, we have multiple sports under an individual coach. And that's true for swimming and diving, and it's true for cross country and track and field. So we've got about 250 employees in the department. And it might surprise you to know we actually work across 10 different buildings on and off campus. Some you're probably more familiar with, the stadium, Jennison Fieldhouse, Breslin Center, Munn Arena, but we've also got 1855 Place, where I'm at today, our athletic department offices. And then we've got the Scandalaris Football Complex. We've got sports operating out of the IM West, the MSU Tennis Facility on Mount Hope Road, the Lash Family Golf Center down on Harrison Road, and then the MSU Boathouse over on the Grand River in Lansing. So we've got 10 different locations, 250 employees, 25 sports, 19 head coaches. That group has won 27 national championships across 10 sports. 110 regular season championships. And while many of you would guess that men's basketball would lead that list with 14, and that's correct, men's cross country actually also has 14 Big Ten championships. They're followed by women's golf at 13. And I know Stacy is very hopeful that next week she'll tie Tom and get to her 14th Big Ten championship, or the program's 14th Big Ten championship. We've got 9 in football and 8 in wrestling. And those of you that, any of you that might follow wrestling will know that our program is in an extraordinary rebound. Roger Chandler, our 4th-year head coach, had 8 student athletes make nationals this year. They were ranked in the top 25 most of the season. And so wrestling is one of those sports that I'll talk about a bit later, but is really, really on the rebound here at Michigan State. When we talk about our department, we really have 2 guiding principles. And the first of those is health, safety, and wellness. You know, our theory is that if our student athletes, our staff, if those associated with our program aren't healthy, safe, and well, then really not a whole lot else matters. So we focus every day on the health, safety, and wellness, not only of our student athletes, but everyone else that comes into contact with our program. And I'll talk a little bit more on that as it relates to COVID in a minute. Our other key priority is that we're a student-first organization. And while it may seem like it goes without saying, from my perspective, it's important that we reiterate that on a regular basis in everything we do. And I typically talk about it as a set of concentric circles. And that innermost circle is our student athlete. And then sort of the next circle out are the people that impact that student on a daily basis, the coaches, the strength and conditioning staff, the nutrition staff, academic support, athletic training, those kinds of folks. And then there are other sets of circles with sort of more bureaucratic people like me. But all of those are really focused on the innermost circle, which is our student athlete. And we need to maintain that focus each and every day to provide them with the best experience we possibly can. And in that, we have 3 goals. And our goals are to make sure that our student athletes are successful on the field of play, that they're successful in the classroom, and that we're setting them up to be successful in whatever their life's pursuit is. And when I'm talking with members of the media or alumni groups, I often joke that it's not really a joke, but that say that I'll be judged publicly, probably in the order in which I mention those, starting with performance on the field. But we're really failing at our job if we don't have some focus really from the other direction. And that is making sure that our students, having had the experience of being a student athlete on our campus, are setting themselves up, and that we're helping set them up to be successful in whatever their life's pursuit might be. And whenever I talk with our student athletes, I always talk to them about those 3 goals and how that really is what we're trying to achieve as a department. And then I share with them that my definition of a Spartan is a person who makes their corner of the world a better place. Whatever that might be, whether they become a professional athlete, as some of our students will, whether their last day of athletic competition is on our campus and they go into a business profession, or wherever their life might take them, if they're making their corner of the world a better place, then from our perspective, they've been successful. So that's really the overarching big picture of MSU Athletics. Now, to give you a little bit of a flavor for what we've been up to this year, it has been challenging by any definition. Our standard budget is about $140 million. Typically, in a typical year, we bring in about $140 million in revenue, and we spend about that much. And that money doesn't come from tuition. It doesn't come from the state appropriation or really from any other MSU source. That money is all money that we generate as an athletic department. Most of it comes from either television or from ticket sales and having spectators in the stands for particularly men's football, secondarily men's basketball. And so in terms of ticket sales, you've got tickets, you've got seat premiums, premium seating options, the suites, other things. And all of those add up to about $35 million in terms of tickets and other kinds of ways to view the game, whether it's in a suite or in a club or what have you. And then about $45 million comes in television revenue. So you can see that with this year playing in football, 9 games instead of 12, having a limited home schedule, and then having none of those games where we could have spectators in the stands, and then going through that same process in basketball, and then with other sundry revenue items like parking and programs and concessions and media rights, because it's hard to sell advertising if there's nobody in the stadium to watch the game. Licensing, people haven't bought as many T-shirts and ball caps when they've mostly been restricted to home, and stores haven't been as open, and people haven't wanted to go in them. All of those things have added up this year to as I said, a typical revenue stream for us is about $140 million. This year, it was about it was reduced by $80 million, such that it was at about $60 million. So that was a massive revenue hit, going in one year from 140 to 60. On the expense side, we were able to reduce our expenses over the course of the fiscal year by about $50 million. So we are running revenue minus expenses this year, a shortfall of about 30 million. Now, happily, we've got some reserves that can help cover that. We also will be able to recover some money through the university from the federal government for COVID-related expenses, such that we'll end the year at about a $5 million loss. We'll cover that loss by borrowing with a market interest rate from the university, a loan that we'll repay over a number of years. So there really is a fairly arm's length, bright line distinction between the athletics budget and the university's budget. I mentioned COVID as an expense item. This year, to give you a little bit of a flavor, as Audrey referenced in her kind introduction, when the season when the football season was canceled or postponed, it was really very challenging for all of us as we worked through where the Big Ten was at. I ended up meeting with my Big Ten counterparts, the athletic directors of the other 13 schools, and the commissioner and conference staff, literally every weekday morning for between 1 and 2 hours from early August through, from early August through really most of the season. And we were, we had been meeting, actually it probably started in early June, to correct myself, through the midpoint of the season at least, and working every day to figure out whether it was possible to have a season, what our schedule might be like, and so on. We came up across the Big Ten with a common COVID testing approach, so that every Big Ten school was testing in the same way, with the same process, the same testing device. And so that came to an expense of about $4.5 million per school for testing for all of our sports. And we shared that cost equally across the 14 Big Ten schools. So happily, that money will hopefully be recoverable through the through federal reimbursement. But between actual COVID testing and then for those that have tested positive, the Big Ten developed a cardiac testing protocol to ensure that our student athletes didn't have COVID-related myocarditis. We went through a cardiac testing protocol that included a blood test, an ECG, and ultimately a cardiac MRI. So more stringent testing protocols than any other conference or the NCAA required. Our football players and other contact sports like wrestling or even volleyball, because people at the net are close to one another, we're testing 6 days a week. Sports that had lesser contact, a tennis, golf, those kinds of sports have been testing 2 to 3 days a week, and then testing more frequently when they're in competition. So we've had some very stringent testing protocols. We've had and a lot of a lot of work done to ensure that early football practices were conducted in terms of the conditioning and all of that, with student athletes 6 foot apart wearing masks. In our early basketball practices, our student athletes were wearing masks. Eventually we were able to get away from that, but it's really been, it's been a unique set of challenges, and you can imagine how weird it would be to be in the Breslin Center, for example, with really no spectators in the stands. And as weird as it might seem, the cutouts that we had did help. I mean, they made a little bit of a difference. And then the Big Ten provided for all of its schools essentially background noise, so that there was crowd noise, so that it wasn't just perfectly silent while the games were going on if you were in the arena. But so between the crowd noise and the cutouts, it helped a little, but still it felt very weird. And I think if you look at the men's basketball schedule this year, and the number of teams that were the win-loss records away, home and away, of the 14 Big Ten teams, it's really an interesting exercise in the value of a home crowd. And I was talking with Coach Izzo yesterday, and we were discussing it, thinking that a home court advantage may be 8 or 9 points, it may be 10 or 12 points, but certainly there is a home court advantage with fans in the stands and the excitement and energy that comes with a home game in basketball, and losing that really lost, I think, something for everyone. So we're very, very hopeful that we'll have fans in the stands for both for football and all of our sports next year. We will have the spring game this Saturday at 2 p.m. I would sort of want to do a little expectation setting. It really won't be a game as much as a practice, and we'll be having drills and some offense against defense. Towards the end of the practice, we will have some scrimmage, but it won't be a traditional spring game. It'll be a little bit more of the flavor of a practice. We're having the opportunity for 6,000 people to come. The band will be playing. We'll have the cheerleaders. Unfortunately for them, it will be their first time in the stadium in over a year. And then we'll have some seats reserved for undergraduate students, as well as for the general public. So we've gone through all of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services protocols. We'll have people in 6 sections of the stadium assigned by wristband to try and create the appropriate degree of physical distancing. But this will really be our first experiment. And interestingly, we're the only Division I college that's hosting a spring game event this year. Michigan did not, and Eastern, Western, and Central are not. So at least in our region, will be the only school hosting a game, and we think it will probably be the largest gathering of folks in at least in the mid-Michigan area in well over a year. So we're very excited to get that underway. It will give our facilities team an opportunity to make sure that we're sort of working the bugs out of the system, with the great hope that as we start the fall, we'll be able to have all of you and 74,000 other folks filling Spartan Stadium. And it's we've now got half of Americans have gotten at least one shot. So obviously we're making great progress. I think the Johnson & Johnson vaccine delay has slowed that a bit, but we're very hopeful that as we watch the Tigers over the course of the summer, as we watch NASCAR and IndyCar events and other events around the country that would have large gatherings of people, concerts and things like that, and to see how those evolve and how they work and whether they're successful will be a good indicator for us of what we're going to face in the fall. But certainly it's our great hope to be largely back to normal, starting with football, which is obviously an outdoor event, and then working into our indoor schedule with basketball, men's and women's basketball, ice hockey, volleyball, and so on. So again, encourage you to get on MSUSpartans.com if you're interested in acquiring tickets to the spring game. Mel is really pumped. He's really excited to get out there. In a way, this is his first season. Last year was such a sort of weird event that that this is really his first season with fans, and we come off two top 15 wins last year against Michigan and Northwestern. A lot of transition this year, a lot of new faces that he's brought in, but some of the old stalwarts will be with us. Connor Hayward is a good friend, and he'll be in the backfield this year. And we've got a little bit of a battle going on at the quarterback position, so that will be fun to see how that evolves. But I do encourage you to think about getting out this fall and seeing things in person. Other comments, as I mentioned, in terms of some of our other sports, a Big Ten championship this year in women's cross country, which was very, very exciting. We've got really one of the elite women's cross country programs in the nation. They come off of a national championship in 2014, but really are at or near the top of the Big Ten and a top 15, 20 program every single year. As I said, wrestling qualified 8 wrestlers for the NCAA championships, something they hadn't done in many years, and they remain a top 25 program. And women's golf comes off a win earlier this month at the Indiana University Spring Challenge, and they're primed for a potential Big Ten championship next week. So very, very excited. A lot of positive things. I'll finish by before taking questions by just saying that from my perspective, we focused for many years on football and men's basketball, and certainly they are our marquee programs. They're critical to our success financially, reputationally, but one of my priorities is trying to see if we can sort of be what I call an "and" organization, and be successful at those two sports and as many of our Olympic sports as possible. And it's in those areas that I think we're really making some extraordinary progress. And as I mentioned, cross country, wrestling, golf, but a number of the other sports have had great success as well. And it's just very exciting to watch those young men and women who toil endlessly and don't always get the acclaim that others might, to see them be successful. So working across all fronts in all of our sports to try and make improvement and see them have every opportunity to succeed. With that, I will open it up to questions. Chris.
Well, I didn't think we were going to go till 4 o'clock, but I've got some questions for you, Bill. One is, and it's a good segue from your last few comments, has the Big Ten faced any different challenges during COVID-19 compared to other conferences across the nation?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I could probably go on for far longer than we have. I would say that it's really interesting. Each conference, and I'll just talk about the Power Five conferences, but each conference really sort of has a unique personality to it, and you see different levels of maybe the right word is aggressiveness in their return to campus approach. Some have been more successful than others in how they've handled testing and how they've handled return to play and stoppages of play. What I would say is that each conference has faced its own challenges, and sometimes based on where they are in the country geographically, how the pandemic has affected different parts of the country at different times. In the Big Ten, we're fairly spread out. You go from Nebraska in the west to Rutgers and Maryland in the east. And so I think some of the geographic challenges for us have been a little greater as different parts of the country have been impacted by the pandemic. But I would also say very positively that the Big Ten Conference is, other conferences you've seen over the years, conferences come and go, conferences really restructure. The Big Ten has not, since Michigan State joined with the University of Chicago leaving, the Big Ten hasn't lost a team in well over 60, 70 years and continues only to grow. And I think that really in large measure is due to the culture of the conference, which is extraordinarily strong. The 14 athletic directors meet weekly with the commissioner. The very open conversations. Not everybody agrees with everything, but very open conversations. The financial structure of the conference is one of revenue sharing, which creates an equal playing field at some level. I mean, obviously, some schools are much wealthier than others, but I would say the culture of the Big Ten actually put it in pretty good stead with the challenges we faced.
Bill, we've got a number of duplicate questions, but they focus on two things. One is talk to me about your thoughts on the pay-to-play rule and how that will change or alter the face of college athletics.
So the rules that are currently under consideration and that you're seeing passed around the country are mostly focused on what's called name, image, and likeness. And what that's really saying is that a student athlete should be able to capitalize on their name, image, or likeness in the same way that a non-student athlete, undergraduate student would. So by way of example, if a tennis player wants to, over the course of the summer, teach tennis lessons to little kids and make some money, under current NCAA rules, that would not be allowable. But a normal student at the university, a non-student athlete, could do that. A piano major could teach piano lessons, for example. So part of it is trying to give student athletes the same ability to capitalize on or market their name, image, and likeness as would other students. Of course, student athletes are different. They are unique and they play a different role in the university. But I think and the other piece of it is that it's not really pay to play as much as it's the opportunity for student athletes to earn revenue from a blog on or a Facebook page or not Facebook, but a YouTube site, those kinds of things. And so, I think it's, I have my own feelings about it. I'm somewhat a traditionalist. At the same time, I think that giving student athletes more flexibility in their ability to earn revenue from a YouTube site, from the ability to participate in a commercial. Some of those kinds of things are sort of equalizers. They wouldn't be receiving any additional funds from the university. I would also say, though, that as these rules evolve, the ultimate goal of those that are pushing these, or at least some of those that are pushing these, would be to essentially turn at least men's basketball and football players into employees, and have them be paid individuals for the sports they participate in. And from my perspective, that's a bridge too far. It's I believe that college athletics, student athletes are students first and athletes second. In some cases it may not feel that way, but if we lose our grip on that model, then we become something other than who we are, and I think that's problematic.
Well, it occurred to me, if it goes that way too, that Ohio State would still have Tressel as their head football coach. So that's kind of interesting how that might work out. Can we talk a little bit, or get your views on the transfer portal, and also explain how some are able to play right away and some have to wait a year?
Sure. So the historically, there were, I could get this right off the top of my head. Most sports that we sponsor could transfer immediately. So meaning that if you transferred, you didn't have to wait a year. You could pick up and play the next season. That was not the case in football, men's and women's basketball, ice hockey.
I know.
And I believe baseball was the fifth sport. And in those 5 sports, you essentially, if you were going to transfer, you had to sit out a year. So one of the decisions, the NCAA eventually concluded that you can't have most of the sports have immediate transfer and other sports have to sit out a year. You have to either make it one way or the other. And so the decision was that you could either make everybody sit a year, or you could make everybody available to have an immediate transfer at one time. And so that was what the NCAA concluded, that all sports would have the ability to have immediate transfer one time without having to sit a year. Now, immediate doesn't mean that you can play on Monday for Michigan State and on Tuesday for Iowa. You do have to wait till the next season, but you don't have to sit a year. So that does create equity across all sports, which is a good thing. The transfer portal is interesting because it's really a sort of fancy name for something that always existed. If a student athlete wanted to transfer, they could put their name into the system and make other schools aware. The transfer portal just sort of brings an added sort of spiciness to the thing that sort of slaps a fancy name on something that kind of always existed. I do think that the ability for immediate transfer is going to, I think you've seen it this year. You've got teams like Kentucky and UConn and other solid basketball schools that have 5, 6, 7 slots open, and they're scrambling to figure out how to fill their team. In our case, I think we've had a number of students enter the transfer portal, and I think that that in most cases those students who are looking for opportunities to get more playing time, and at Michigan State, I think we in all likelihood can be on the sort of we'll be on the better end of the transfer portal most of the time. But it really creates, from my perspective, it's very challenging because you've got at its worst people recruiting people off of other teams, and there is value to it, but I think it will create very challenging environments for coaches as people move around a lot more.
I've seen it lately as the kids utilizing it to go to a school where they're more likely to start or get more playtime.
Yeah, and and at Michigan State, Tom, Tom runs a program that where our to a person, our student athletes feel they're valued. They love Tom, and the support that he brings to them. And so I sort of won't name names, but Tom's had players come in, literally with tears in their eyes, on the one hand not wanting to leave, and on the other hand, thinking about, if I could have an opportunity to play, I may never be a pro, but if I could have the opportunity to play, it'd be a really cool way to to end my career as an athlete, and with really mixed emotions moving on. But
Well, that's a tough one too, and especially if you look at like an incoming really strong freshman recruiting class, that changes the landscape a little too. Listen, this is a great kickoff question, so this will be the last one. How many tickets for the spring game are going to be available to the public and the students after the donor tickets are distributed?
Well, we plan on having at least 500 tickets held for students, and several thousand tickets held for donors. So I would expect that over half of the tickets, at least half of the tickets, and likely more, would be available to the general public.
Excellent.
And I would say, Chris, that we apologize that it's 6,000. If I could find a way to get 20 or 30 or 40 in there, by golly, we would. But trying to start it really safely, thoughtfully, and hopefully we'll be going full speed ahead in the fall.
Yeah, you're not in an enviable position when it comes to those situations. So, Bill, I want to thank you so much for spending time. I know how busy you are, but I also knew you'd have breaking news because your environment changes about every 36 hours or so. So
it does.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for having me, and it's great to see some familiar faces out there and some good friends. And I will just thank you very much for having me join.
We'll see you at the stadium or around the court.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Bill Beekman, Athletic Director at MSU. Again, I want to thank our sponsors very quickly: Shaheen Chevrolet Cadillac, Dean Transportation, the Capital Region International Airport, Sinair, PNC Bank, LAFQ, MSU International Business Center, and Broad College of Business, Greater Lansing Sports Authority, and of course, WLNS TV6. Thanks to Audrey for coming by and introducing our speaker today. Our next virtual event is going to be on September 8th at 11:30 a.m. And our speakers are going to be talking about mobility. It's going to be a mobility panel that includes the Center for Automotive Research President and CEO, Carla Belo, Mish Auto Executive Director, Glenn Stevens, who is also Vice President of the Automotive and Mobility Initiatives, Chief Mobility Officer at the state of Michigan, and Trevor Paul, who is leading the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. And also look forward to our next Michigan Future Business Index meeting that should occur sometime in June. We don't have a date at this point, but you'll be getting it soon. I also want to thank my staff here at Michigan Business Network who are involved in this: Mike Steibel, Wade Tong, and Jeffrey Mosier. If they were here, I'd make them hear your round of applause. Finally, thanks to all of you for being part of the 2021 Virtual Speaker Series event. If you want to go back and watch any of this or care to share it with your business associates, please visit our website at michiganbusinessnetwork.com. It is there in entirety. By the way, you're able to pick up MBN podcasts now on Spotify, as well as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and several others. These additional platforms are allowing us to expand even further the size and the geographic scope of our audience. So with that, again, thanks to our speaker, Bill Beekman, and to all of you. And as always, from all of us here at the Michigan Business Network, we wish you a very prosperous month.